皆さん、こんにちは。私のセッションをご覧いただきありがとうございます。.NET プラットフォームエンジニアリングディレクターのスティーブ・キャロルです。18年間マイクロソフトで働いてきました。でも、.NET は4年間かな。.NET プラットフォームチームには ASP.NET チームとランタイムとライブラリチームとコンパイラーチームが含まれます。日本語が少しできますけど、この複雑な概述的な語彙よくできませんから、このセッションは残念ながら英語です。本当にすみません。いつか日本語で発表したいと思います。でも今年字幕があります。もう一つの問題があります。先週病気になってしまった。多分 COVID でした。今元気になりました。でも声があまり良くないんです。OK。始まりますか ?OK。3、2、1、英語。Okay, everybody. Thank you. And thank you for your patience with my voice. Today, I'm going to talk to you about what's new in .NET 6, C#, C# 10, and Visual Studio 2022. Really excited to speak to you today. You can see my contact information on the bottom there for Twitter. If you ever want to reach out to me, if you have any questions, by all means, reach out. Okay, to get started, let's talk a little bit about the why. Why are we here? .NET is a unified development platform. It's cross-platform, it's open source, and it's a unified development platform for you to build whatever you want. You can use the same tools, libraries, languages, and runtimes to build any application across all of these different targets, from mobile to cloud to web to gaming to IoT to AI. You learn a sort of common base set of libraries and APIs, and then you can just reapply all of these skills that you've developed across all of these different app types. And you can use the tools that you love, Visual Studio for Mac, or Visual Studio for Code. Or if you're a CLI kind of person, you can use that. We've got a great ecosystem full of thousands of really high quality NuGet packages that give you all the tools that you need to get started and focus your energies on building what matters to you. So moving on. With this slide, I really want to convince you that the time that you're investing today in learning more about .NET is really something that is going to pay off for you. We are very, very proud and happy to announce that this year we have now reached up to 5.4 million .NET developers using any of our tools, such as Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. That number goes up every year. We're really proud to have so many developers investing in our ecosystem. Probably our biggest point of pride is that for yet another year, we landed at the top of the Stack Overflow survey for most beloved framework. So that's 3 years in a row for .NET Core and .NET 5 this year. We are also the Cloud Native Foundation. They monitor the highest velocity OSS projects. The way they measure this is they look at the rate of pull requests and issues coming in and how many are actually accepted. And the .NET repos have been consistently in the top 30 since 2017. So, we, of course, we do a lot of work at Microsoft to make this great, but we're very proud of the fact that we also have almost 7,000 community contributors going into .NET 6 alone, and they've made over 21,000 different contributions. So we can't do it alone, and we want you to know that we are a true open source, open project, and we very much appreciate everything that everyone has done to help make .NET 6 a great success. I hope at least somebody sitting in the audience right now can see themselves in their avatar in this picture. Maybe Mr. Takayama-san down here. We just really, from both me and my team, I'd like to wish you a great thank you for all your contributions. We couldn't have done it without you. So, one area that we definitely focused a ton on in .NET 6 that I want to just lead off with right off the bat is performance. .NET, our primary benchmark that we target is something called Tech Empower. And we focus on these pretty aggressively. We put our best perf people on them, and we go and we try to make .NET performance because we think this is a pretty good real-world benchmark. So this year, we really feel like we've blowing our competition out of the water. We've got 7 million requests per second on the primary one that we look at, as compared to like only 2 million for Java and 0.66 for Node.js. So the ASP.NET Core Web Framework is blazingly fast. This year, we also put a bunch of energy into Entity Framework core performance. Entity Framework, if you don't know, is our primary ORM for the ecosystem, object relational model. And so we have gotten a 92% improvements in requests per second going through there. Query performance has gotten up to like 36% better in some of our tests. And the .NET, ASP.NET, and EF-Stack is now the second most highly performing entry in the full ORM category in the Tech and Power world. So we're very proud of that. So .NET 6, let's talk about the overall themes of the release. First of all, as I stressed on that first slide, we started a project back in .NET 5 to take all of the different parts of .NET and consolidate them into a common base library and SDK that you can use consistently across that. That means, for instance, we used to have both a mono and a core CLR runtime, and they even had their own separate libraries that have slight differences in between them. So we've worked on a multi-year project to bring all of that together. So now no matter what workload you're targeting, you get this unified common base libraries and SDKs. As I mentioned, we did a bunch of work on performance. I talked a little bit about it. I'm going to talk even more about it in the future. One thing I really would encourage you to take a look at is a member of my team by the name of Mr. Stephen Tobe. Every year he takes and he writes a very, very long blog post that encapsulates not just all the things we did, but also contributions from our community for improving performance. And he talks you not only through what areas got faster, which is useful in and of itself, but he also shows you how we did those analyses. So I actually think this link here that I have here, https://akams net6perf. If you look at this and you read this, it can be a really great education in how to then take those same principles, see what we do in the .NET Core, in the core of .NET, and then apply that to your own code and be the big hero of your company. So I really encourage you to take it's super long. You're going to click on it. You're going to be like, oh my God. But it is absolutely full of gems and learnings that you can then apply to your own code. Okay, our big theme is simplifying development. We want to make it easier to get started. We want you to have to write less boilerplate code. We want to make it easier for new .NET 6 developers to come online. So as you hire new developers, that they can have a quick on-ramp. We're going to talk a little bit about, at least at a high level, about some of the new C# 10 features in a minute. But we also have F# 6. We're now on a yearly release model where every time we release a new version of .NET, there is a matching version of the language. And that allows us to get you new innovations and language features faster. And we're quite happy with how that's working out. If you're an Apple person, Apple Silicon is now fully supported in .NET 6. And important to many customers, this is a long-term support release, which means that it will be fully supported by Microsoft for 3 years and replacing .NET 5. Okay, the next project that I am very excited to talk to you a bit about today is, of course, Visual Studio 2022. It is the best IDE for .NET development with support for the latest project types for instance, cross-platform mobile and desktop applications with .NET MAUI, which we'll go into more detail about later, responsive web UI with Blazor, which we'll go into more detail about in a few moments, and you can build, run, debug .NET apps in Linux environments with WSL integration. You can edit ASP.NET Framework web forms in an updated web designer using Web Live Preview. It's going to help you stay productive and collaborative with Hot Reload, which we're going to talk about more in a second. IntelliCode, which gives you whole line completions and suggestions for common code refactorings on the fly. We've got built-in Git and GitHub integration to clone repos, manage work items, and even set up your CI/CD workflows to GitHub Actions in Azure. And but really the big one, the big feature, the thing that we've been working on for quite a while, and I think is going to be the biggest impact in your day-to-day development as a new user of Visual Studio 2022, is the fact that it is our first 64-bit version of Visual Studio. It can take advantage of the full power of your dev box to work on projects of any size and scale. I think you're going to notice significant improvements in reliability because of that. And I think, as we'll talk more, there's also a bunch of performance improvements that you're going to see. Okay, so we talked about .NET a little bit. We talked a little bit about Visual Studio 2022. Here's another tool that we've just released. It's called the .NET Upgrade Assistant. Now, we at Microsoft, and in particular in the .NET team, know that we're actually approaching our 20th anniversary. Our 20th anniversary is next month. And we know that there are 20 years of .NET code still running in production all over the world. And we take that code super seriously, and our commitment to you guys to keep that stuff working. So we have also created a .NET Upgrade Assistant, which we've already had 40K downloads even before we officially released it. It's designed to help you modernize older .NET Framework code bases and to bring them to the modern .NET so that you can take advantage of all these things that I'm talking about. It's a command line tool. It gives you step-by-step instructions for upgrading to the latest version of .NET. We've had over 40K downloads. Customers like Optimizely have given us a lot of great feedback and through that period, and now we're ready to make it generally available. It supports C# and VB and .NET 6. We're seeing customers using it very successfully today, so I encourage you to give it a try. If you're unable to at this point, though, that's okay. Like I said, we take your legacy code seriously and want to make sure that it keeps running. So we're also preparing to ship an update for .NET Framework version 4.8.1 that will add support for ARM64 and enhancements to accessibility and other security and reliability improvements. This is, if you're interested in this, it will be available as part of the Windows Insider preview builds over the coming months. Thanks. Okay, moving on. Simplified development. Hot reload is the big feature, I think, in productivity for this version of Visual Studio and this version of .NET 6. It's one of my favorite features. I want to be clear, we've enabled it anywhere. Hot reload is not just for .NET 6 developers. It works on multiple project types and all .NET versions 4.6 and higher that support edit and continue. So .NET 6 is the most optimized for this. You are definitely going to have your best experience using this with .NET 6 because there we enable things like Razor editing, CSS hot reload. They're just more supported edits in general. The ability to use hot reload even when you're not attached with a debugger. So like if you're a kind of person who does Control F5, that will work fine. Hot reload is also supported through the .NET Watch CLI tool if you want to be working more from the command line. And Blazor and .NET MAUI projects, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, are also supported. Okay, let's talk a little bit about C#10. I'm not going to go into details on this. I know there are talks that do a deeper dive on this later in this series, so I encourage you to look at those. But I wanted to talk about the simplification features. So, for instance, C#10 has a strong focus on simplification. We have global usings. So you can see here, you can now put the word global in front of usings and put that somewhere inside of your project, and it will apply to every file inside that project. So this is another case where you just have to write less boilerplate code. You write the using once and it's shared everywhere inside the project. Project types can now offer implicit usings so that, for instance, you don't have to type / using system because it is implicitly included from either the project file or based on the project type. I'm going to demonstrate this one for you later, but file scoped namespaces are great because, frankly, they save you indentation space and they make things look nicer on the screen. I will show you how aesthetically pleasing this is later in the talk. Records can now be structs as well as classes, and building on that, you can actually say that records are classes instead of leaving it implied. And finally, lambdas now have natural types in many cases. This may seem a little obscure. This feature makes lambda expressions more similar to methods and local functions, and they make it easier to use lambda expressions without declaring a variable of a delegate type. And the reason this is important is they actually work more seamlessly with the new ASP.NET Core minimal APIs. And speaking of that, minimal APIs for cloud-native apps is something we're really proud of in the new release. This is, if you kind of think about it, in .NET 5 we introduced the concept, and C# 9 we introduced the concept of top-level statements, where you could basically write console.writeLine hello world, and that would be your entire program. Trying to remove the ceremony, again, trying to make it easier and more approachable for people new to our ecosystem to get started and to have some of that less stuff to explain just to get started. So minimal APIs is basically that concept, but applied into the world of ASP.NET. And the 3 lines that you see on the right here are a completely valid and complete ASP.NET program. It creates a web application, it creates a route on the root path, and we even pass in as a delegate as a lambda, the actual function of what it should do on that path. So this is indeed the entire Hello World program written in minimal APIs. So no usings, no class definitions needed. This is an easy way to build APIs that can immediately take advantage of cloud scale with all the ceremony and setup code of traditional controller style web APIs. When your project starts to get too big, there's a path to just start to add controllers. This isn't a thing that you have to do instead of other things. You can completely choose to ignore this if it's not your bag. But we think a lot of people will find a lot of value in doing smaller things or getting started here and then growing up into the more full MVC style. Okay, let's talk a little bit about cloud development. So no matter what type of cloud app you're building, .NET and Azure have you covered. A very common pattern, of course, on the left here is N-tier. These apps are typically simpler to build. They work well with smaller teams and are deployed all at once. ASP.NET has many features to help you build beautiful, scalable web apps based on this pattern. Another common pattern is the microservices pattern. It enables rapid, frequent, and reliable delivery of large, complex, highly scalable applications. Each loosely coupled service can be independently deployed and owned by separate teams within the organization, which has a lot of nice benefits to manager types like me. You choose the architecture that's right for you, and ASP.NET is there to serve you well. So now I want to just stress really hard that .NET is a thing that Microsoft has bet big on, and modern .NET is something that large quantities of Microsoft teams are getting a large benefit out, so that you have the confidence to know that if you go forwards and roll this out, you're going to see those benefits as well. I will say one of the best parts of my job is working with other teams at Microsoft and helping them move their code from .NET Framework to unlock all of the benefits of modern .NET. Here are just a few examples of some of the product groups within Microsoft that are using .NET at scale with great performance. And with each of these teams, we've seen significant cost savings running these large-scale services by simply moving from .NET Framework to the modern .NET. And moving from .NET 5 to .NET 6, we've even seen them get even faster. Teams from Cosmos DB to Azure Active Directory have significantly improved their COGS migrating to .NET 6 and .NET 5. They've done things like adopted profile-guided optimizations and seen improvements to not just throughput, but also reductions in GC pause time that improve the sort of like responsiveness of their applications, as well as just decreases in memory improvements so that they can just use smaller footprints. So as you can see here, Dynamics is one of our key internal partners. Speaking of Dynamics, to achieve the scale that Dynamics 365's gateway service has, they have been using our new product, YARP. YARP stands for yet another reverse proxy. Mohitotsu no reverse proxy, right? So this is, so why, Steve? I hear you asking from afar. Why another reverse proxy? Well, it turned out at Microsoft, a number of services within Microsoft had their own reverse proxies, either built themselves using older technology, and they needed new features. As an example, HTTP2 support, or to be able to support gRPC. However, each of these services does something just a little bit differently, so none of them were well suited to like an off-the-shelf solution like Nginx or whatever. We saw this as an opportunity to solve an internal problem and to create a solution that could be used externally as well, and to provide real-world scenarios that we can use for exercising end-to-end usage of .NET. So today, YARP is being used in production in both Dynamics and app services at scale. And you can see these are some impressive scale numbers. I want to really stress we are doing cloud scale work with YARP 1.0. And if you are looking for a highly customizable open source reverse proxy that is well suited to use in a .NET context, I think YARP is going to be a great choice for you. It's customizable using C# code. So again, you can use that C# skills that you're building to do anything. happy to say that, starting from the day we released, Azure App Services and all of these other parts of Azure are ready for .NET 6 in all regions for both Linux and Windows on App Services. Azure Static Web Apps now supports full stack .NET 6 apps with Blazor, WebAssembly, and Azure Functions both supported. Azure Functions support for .NET 6 is now available in the Azure Functions 4.0 runtime, and both the in-process and isolated models are supported in .NET 6's Azure Functions. Adding on to that, there's a new service that we're very excited about. Azure Container Apps was announced at Ignite. They aim to make building microservice-based applications a lot easier. Container Apps is the only serverless container solution offering a combination of built-in HTTP autoscale, which includes scaling all the way to 0, and event-driven autoscale to run containers that may be processing messages from queues, streams, or databases. Container Apps supports microservice architectures built with containers using any language, not just .NET, language, framework, or runtimes. Container Apps provide a streamlined code-to-cloud pipeline using GitHub Actions. Container Apps abstract away Kubernetes and let you focus on building apps instead of managing infrastructure. It lets you perform modern application lifestyle tasks, such as application upgrades, traffic shifting, and versioning, ready to run for teams of every skill set. Container Apps are perfect for microservices built with .NET 2. Whether you're building ASP.NET web apps, minimal APIs, or using the Worker Services template for background services, Container Apps can run them seamlessly. You'll also be able to deploy them to Container Apps within Visual Studio 2022. And the tooling's available today in the VS22 preview channel with the release of 17.1 Preview 1, which I think is very imminently shipping. Okay, let's talk about client. We introduced Blazor in the .NET Core 3 set of releases. Blazor lets you write full stack web applications with C# instead of JavaScript, and it has become very popular. In fact, it's one of the fastest growing workloads in .NET today. We've been just really delighted with how fast people have been adopting it. It has had 2 supported models since spring 2022, or spring of 2020. 2020 has never really ended, has it? Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly, which run completely in the browser. Blazor has a shared component model across the server and the client browser, and depending on your application's needs, you can choose the right model for you. We're actually seeing, surprisingly, almost exactly 50-50 usage of some people choosing Blazor Server and some people choosing Blazor WebAssembly, so we're glad to offer both. We've released even more features for your Blazor web apps in .NET 6, and here's some examples. You can now, one of the big asks that we had, especially for Blazor WebAssembly, was ahead-of-time compilation. So there is a special ahead-of-time compiler that is now available for Blazor WebAssembly that will significantly improve runtime performance, especially if you're doing some computationally intensive things. I strongly recommend you take a look at this. Like, for instance, image filters is a pretty good example of things that can run inside the browser and run much faster when we do ahead-of-time compilation for them. We've also done a lot of work to improve the download size of Blazor WebAssembly apps to make them smaller. And even though we've added over 500 new APIs in .NET 6, the overall size of the download of the Blazor WebAssembly main package that you need in order to make WebAssembly work has gotten smaller. Also, when pre-rendering Blazor components from the server, you can now persist the state of those components so it can be used on the client. Also happy to announce that there are Blazor Fluent UI components have been released. This is 40 plus Blazor components that have been released with fully accessible styles matching the latest Windows 11 Fluent visuals. Check them out and use them in your Blazor applications. And then that takes me to start talking about MAUI, which we're very excited about. .NET MAUI is the evolution of Xamarin Forms. It's designed to help you deliver high-performance, cross-platform, native desktop and mobile apps, all from a single code base. .NET MAUI, under the hood, uses the technologies for building native applications. So on Windows, it maps to the latest UI stack there, which is WinUI. For macOS, it maps to Mac Catalyst. And of course, on iOS and Android, it maps to iOS and Android. .NET MAUI abstracts all those frameworks into a single framework built on .NET 6. So again, you learn your C#, you learn your unified SDK, and you've got skills that can come into all of these different platforms. This means that you can build all these apps from a single code base and a single project system instead of learning different stacks and languages for each of them, having to learn Java for Android and then Swift for iOS. You can use one language, one set of libraries, and one UI stack for all of them. Our plan is to release it in early spring of this year. You can watch the progress and help contribute on the GitHub in the .NET MAUI repo that you can see below. Another exciting thing about MAUI is what we call hybrid apps, where you combine Blazor with .NET MAUI. We first supported Blazor on the server, then we brought it to the browser in WebAssembly, and now we're extending it again so you can write these Blazor hybrid apps. This means you can create a hybrid client app which combines web and native UI together in a single native client application. It's primarily targeted at web developers that want to create a rich client with offline experiences for their users. So think about this a little bit as like Electron is web technologies inside of a particular kind of shell. This is Blazor inside of a MAUI shell that can then combine with more native UI in order to give that rich client experience while reusing all of the great assets that you built for your Blazor application. It relies on the MAUI UI stack for a native application container and native controls should you want to use them. Blazor desktop apps have full access to the machine. You can do things like call native APIs, access the file system, write multi-threaded applications, all with the high performance and optimal memory consumption you get with .NET. You can't do this with pure web technologies. These scenarios will also be supported when .NET MAUI releases, again, early this year, spring. Well, we'll say spring. Okay, I'm going to do just a little bit more with Visual Studio here. First thing I want you to see is this. You watch this. I'll let it run a couple of times. I'm so excited about it. This is the find in files is so much faster on large C# solutions. It can run as much as 3 times faster. I really do think that performance is the number one thing that leads to high performance or high productivity for developers. But I do have some demos I want to show you of productivity features inside of .NET. So let me see if I can seamlessly transition. Oh, hey, that actually worked. Great. So first things first, whenever I give a talk like this, much like I always want to tell people about Stephen Tobe's performance blog posts, because I think those are a critical learning resource, I absolutely love this. Kendra Havens is one of the PMs on our team. Her and Mika down here, they keep together this thing called the Productivity Features repo. And you can see it's just GitHub, Kendra Havens, Productivity Features. If you search for Productivity Features space Kendra, you will find it. I love this repo because it is basically, it not for every new release and every update of Visual Studio, you can get a little demonstration of all of the little bits and bobs that we add in to make life better for you, the developer. This is a great way to stay current on all of the neat tricks inside Visual Studio as we add them. And so I'm going to show you a few different new things inside Visual Studio 2022 for .NET developers. Some of them are small, some of them are big, but I really want you to also understand like that this resource exists as a way for you to be able to teach your teams about these, and it's really cool. So the very first one I want to show you, which I promised at the beginning, sorry, I was actually trying to make my contribution to this because I made some changes. I'll get back to that later. First things first, let's take a look at that simplification feature I was talking about so much earlier. Let's convert from a good old-fashioned brace style namespace to a namespace statement. So we have a quick action built in here, and you can see convert to file scope namespaces, and let's watch it go. I'm going to click this. Look at how much more space we have over here. Look how much more compact everything looks. It's beautiful. So I absolutely love that one. All right, let's go and take a look at this. Again, there in every single release of Visual Studio, there are just tons of new little refactorings, and they're in some ways this is the best way to keep track of where they are. Actually, come over here to the Solution Explorer for a minute. You can see here the naming system here is I am showing you the changes in 17.0. But there are plenty of things that you may not know are in Visual Studio from earlier updates. So I'll show you some from the earlier ones too in a minute. So here's one. Here's a very simple refactoring where you can prefer a null check over a type check, and it will just automatically apply it for you. So that again, small, but very useful if you want to get the clarity of that. And I believe it is also faster to check against not null. We've improved XML comments to have built-in exception information, which should definitely save you some time. I love that one. But my absolute favorite 17.0 new features, give me two. Give me two favorite features. One of them is this var implicit stuff. And actually, let me show you another just generalized trick that I have learned over the years. If you come in here and you go C#, and then you go to general, indeed, if you go to advanced, there are always all sorts of new cool inline things. So like the ones that I'm showing you there, these are these inline parameters. As we move them through the development pipeline, they have a tendency to get turned on by default once we're very confident that they're not going to annoy anybody. But if you're the kind of person who's watching this talk, I have a feeling you're also the kind of person who likes to play with new things. And so, by all means, try out all these different inline features, and you can get like the imputed string thing here. That's not really in the source code. It's just tells you what the var gets to. Okay, so anyways, that was my first favorite. Second favorite is this one I'm about to show you, which is right-click, go to definition on parse to see navigation to decompiled sources is now on by default. This has actually been baking for a while, but if you do a go to definition here, it will take you to a decompiled source file. You can see it pulls it up, and you can see here I am on parse. And now when I open that up, you can see it gives me, of course, the documentation itself, but also a decompilation of what that function actually does. And I can keep going, see what's in that one. All right. Oh, okay, more. And it decompiles the code for you. So even though this is in newtonsoft.json.link.i object, it's there and ready for you. Another one that I really like that I want to take a minute and show you. This was in 16.10, i.e. this was in Visual Studio 2019 update 10. But I love it, and I know not enough people have seen it. So I'm going to take a few of my remaining minutes with you and do this. If we go in here, and now I'm going to type this. You can see you now get a bunch of hints that include the locals, right? So we've improved the hints here. I love that a lot. I also love the inline hints of the X and Y, and so yeah, very cool new feature. So yeah, I definitely encourage you to grab this repo, walk through it, see all the many different fun and exciting ways that you can use this. Another quick one I want to draw your attention to. I don't have a great demo for it, but we have sync namespaces is now available. This allows you to make all of the namespaces in your source files match up to the directory structure. And so that is a very useful thing. It's just a one click. There weren't too many namespaces here, so it didn't do much, but that is another great feature for just making things look nice and cleaning them up. So yeah, so that's just a very brief overview of all of the cool new things available inside of Visual Studio 2022. And I encourage you to grab this repo and play around with it. But you know what? I just really encourage you to load your largest solution in it and see it load fast and see it load reliably. And I think we will be friends just based on that, right? Okay, let me see if I can get this back up again. Okay, so that basically brings me to the end of my my time with you today. I want to just give you a quick call to action and remind you of some of the things that we talked about today. So .NET 6 is ready and waiting. We've already shipped our first update. Second update goes out in February. It's ready. It's production ready. Get out there and deploy it. You're going to get some performance gains just by moving from 5 to 6, and you get access to all of these new scenarios that we've talked about all day. Second, I want to encourage you to immediately go up there. I want to really stress that one thing that was super important to us as we were putting Visual Studio 2022 together is that we wanted to make it a very smooth upgrade. There are not a lot of removed features or breaking changes or things that will make it hard for you to upgrade. It was very much designed to be the, hey, it's 2019 plus, and it has the 64-bit reliability that everybody has been demanding for years. And so I hope that you can just jump right on that and try it out. And remember, Visual Studios can sit side by side. So just because you install 2022 doesn't mean you can't fall back to 2019 if you need it for some reason. So you should have the confidence that you can upgrade both .NET 6 and Visual Studio to 2022 without blowing up your machine or anything. Again, if you've got framework code that you've been looking to move forward, I really want to encourage you to give a try to the AKMS.NET Upgrade Assistant. Again, this is an open source project. If you hit any issues, file an issue. We're improving this constantly. There are new releases all the time, and we're adding new and better upgrade assistants. And finally, I hope I got you excited about the possibilities of building with Maui. The preview is available now. Go grab it. And I hope you have a wonderful conference, and 本当にありがとうございました。